It's still morning. Welcome to this Michigan Cooperative Directors Association sponsored webinar. I am Cheryl Mays, Director of the Mid-Michigan Library League, and I'm very grateful to Merit and to our presenter today, Jason Brown, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at Merit in Ann Arbor. And Merit is celebrating, I guess, the 50 years of existence in the state. And they provide networking, security, and community services to their members. Merit's mission is connecting organizations and building community. Jason Brown, Chief Information Security Officer, has been at Merit for about 2.5 years, and I'm going to turn over the webinar to Jason. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you everybody for joining this morning. Like Cheryl said, my name is Jason Brown. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Merit Network. And my clicker is not working. Hold on one second. There we go. So I've been in the public space for almost 10 years. Before this, I got my start working in higher education, both at Central Michigan University and at Ferris State University. I had a 2-year stint where I was working in the private sector, then came back to the public working for the state of Michigan as one of 2 enterprise security architects for the state, helping the various agencies comply with a number of different compliance requirements, regulations, those types of things. So if you can think of a regulation, I had to deal with it in some form or fashion and help those agencies architect and secure their infrastructure to those regulations. Now, as of October of 2015, I moved over to Merit Network as their Chief Information Security Officer, where I run their internal security program, along with helping develop a security services portfolio that we turn around and offer back to our membership. Those services include pen testing, vulnerability scanning, risk assessments, managed firewall services, webinars, training, workshops, those types of things. So that's just a little bit about myself, and we're all here today to talk about how libraries can secure their environments, both from a security perspective, but also how does privacy play into some of this. So for the agenda, we're just going to get off the start with some of the basics. Still, the #1 way of getting into and infiltrating an organization nowadays is still by phishing attacks. So we'll take a look at a couple examples of that. How do you protect your infrastructure? Keeping sensitive data secret. We'll take a look at a couple of cybersecurity frameworks. Those are used to help organizations go through and kind of align, their business processes with security best practices, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. How to start a security or a privacy program, what it looks like, and what does it take to go to the cloud, and who's liable for your information, and we'll talk about that again in a little bit, and information sharing with third parties, and really looking for some outside help, free services, those types of things for the libraries. So as we get started, we'll take a look at some of the basics here. I know this is going to be rudimentary for a lot of you, but password hygiene is still one of the things that we're struggling with as a security community. And we'll take a look at some of the most common passwords here in a second. But really what you want to be able to do is leverage not using or leveraging a strong passphrase as opposed to a password. You know, something that's easy to remember, but it's long enough to where it's very hard for somebody to be able to guess or brute force against some of your systems. Don't reuse your passwords across multiple systems within your environment. Don't mix passwords between your personal accounts, like your bank accounts, your Facebook accounts, LinkedIn, to your work accounts, so your Active Directory and those types of things. You know, you want to be able to set up alerts in case if somebody's actively going against your environment, trying to guess what your passwords are. And there are a lot of services out there now that do active location-based authentication. And what does that mean? That means blocking people from being able to log in from Russia, China, Taiwan, some of the bigger known state governments that are actively hacking some of the larger businesses throughout the world, and even to small to medium-sized businesses as well. Because, you know, hackers over the years have come to the mindset that, you know, they're not going after the big fish anymore. They're not going after the Microsofts and the Googles and those types of organizations. Yeah, they're still actively being attacked. However, small to medium-sized organizations, they realize that they don't have security personnel on staff. They don't have maybe the staff that's there don't have the background. So those are the easy targets that they're going after. So being able to leverage location-based authentication, you can basically say anybody from within the United States can log in and access your services, but anybody else outside of that, you won't be able to log in. Looks like there's a question. Something wrong with the VoIP? Can everybody hear me okay?
Jason, I think some people are having trouble getting their voice over IP, and I've suggested that they can call in on the phone, but this recording is, you know, also going to be posted, so
okay.
So there's all kinds of options here.
Okay. Just want to double check and make sure. So the most common passwords. LinkedIn back in, what, 2014 or 2015 suffered a major security breach. And as you can see from what was dumped out of LinkedIn as far as passwords and lining those up to the most common passwords, we're still seeing issues where the most common password is 123456, or password, or, you know, football, those types of things. Passwords that are very easily guessable, passwords that you shouldn't be using because you would be able to, I would be able to crack a password, any of these top 15 within seconds. So you want to start looking at how do you change your mindset in picking passwords. And again, when we look at the differences between 2015 and 2016, again, we see the same exact problem. 123456 shows up again as the most common password being used out there for online services or your corporate accounts, bank accounts, those types of things. So how do you really pick a good password? And I say password, and we're going to talk about passphrases here. You know, my son's birth date is December 12th, 2004. And if you take a look at what's after the hyphen there, MSBI 12/DEC, 4, that is a way of being able to create a passphrase. So you're taking a sentence or something that's meaningful and turning around and breaking it up to a point to where, like I said, it's easy to remember, but you're picking and choosing the characters out of that sentence in order for you to be able to remember, and you utilize that passphrase to log into a given resource. You know, we've all probably went to college, and I'm sure, you know, wow, does that couch smell terrible? But, you know, before that, you know, wow, ... BOEST, I mean, you get the point here. Breaking up a number of different letters within a sentence and being able to pick and choose which ones you want to help remember what that password is. My favorite way of being able to create passwords is by shifting your fingers or shifting your hands. So on the keyboard, if everybody takes a look, you got the little nubbies on the F and the J keys. If you move your fingers up to the left, so they're not on the F and J, however, they're on the R and U, and then you start typing out your password, you can get something that is extremely meaningful and easy to remember. However, it comes out like this. Something that's very hard to guess, something that's very long, complex. When you hit the Shift key and you're on the top row, it creates the special characters there for you. So this is probably one of my most favorite ways of creating passwords, and it's easy to use, easy to remember. The thing that people have to pay attention to is it's hard to get used to shifting your fingers on the keyboard in order to create a password like this. It does take, you know, a few days of getting used to it, but once you're used to typing in your passwords by shifting your hands, I feel that that is a better way of being able to pick a password rather than some of this up here. But it's up to you on how you want to be able to use that. And salting at the bottom, if you don't know what salting is or if you've never heard of that before, it's really adding a padding to either the front or the back of a given password. So, you know, you could have a padding of 1, 2, 3, 4 on the end of this, and you use that for every single one of your passwords. It's just another way of keeping things a little bit more complex but easy to remember when creating your passwords. The other thing that you want to take a look at for your organization is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is known as something you know, something you have, and something you are. You have to pick one or pick two of those three. So something you know is your password. Something you have is maybe a cell phone, or something you are is biometrics. And everybody uses two-factor authentication every single day without even realizing it. And the picture here is a picture of a debit card. Because what do you have to do in order to use your debit card? Well, you have to have the physical card in your hand, which is something you have, and you have to know the PIN number in order to run the transaction. That's something you know. So utilizing that when you're authenticating to a given resource heightens the level of security for your passwords and heightens that level of assurance that you are who you say you are when you're going to log into a given resource. Dual Security is one company that comes to mind when you're looking at multi-factor authentication. Google Authenticator also allows that. And even a lot of banks and financial institutions are leveraging text messages to cell phones in order to provide that second factor of authentication. So that is just an additional way of being able to protect your account, because if you don't have that physical device with you, when your password is compromised from LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, they still will not be able to log into your accounts. So, like I had mentioned, phishing is one of the biggest ways of being able to socially engineer your employees and get them to do something that they wouldn't normally do. So for this example, they're trying to trick the person into doing something that they wouldn't normally do. And, the first thing that comes right off the bat is this is the final warning: your email will be shut down if you don't act on something. They are, creating fear into the person and saying that there's consequences that will be enacted if you don't react and do something immediately. The other thing that you want to take a look at is it's not personalized. It says "Dear User" here in the body of the email. This email address could come from your domain, but most times it does not. And it's got a link here that says "Upgrade." So normally, if you click on this link here that says "Upgrade," it will take you to a secondary page where it will ask you to enter in your username and password. And basically, what you're doing is you're giving up your username and password to that malicious user, and they're storing it in the database somewhere, and they're using that to either turn around and begin attacking other people within your organization, or siphoning out your address book and sending phishing emails from your account to other people, because these other people that are in your address book, they know who you are, they trust that you are who you say you are, and they're counting on others taking action because of the fact that it's coming from your email account. Another example here, this one is from, it looks like it's coming from the Bank of America. This one's pretty easy to tell, because this isn't coming from Bank of America. This is actually coming from a Comcast account. It's going to a number of undisclosed recipients. And again, it's a reply back to a Comcast.net account. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was receiving something from Bank of America, I would assume it would be coming from BOA.com instead of Comcast.net. Here again, dear member, it's not personalized. Please sign into your account because we have detected unusual activity, and we're going to shut your account down if you don't do something. So again, there's a consequence of not acting and inflicting fear or doubt into the user and making them click on bankofamerica.com. Now, what's being depicted here is the fact that if this was a true email with that email address and you had HTML turned on in your email box, what you would be able to do is take your cursor and hover over top of bankofamerica.com, and what would show up is a different URL, which is depicted right here. So this is a website that the malicious user has set up in order for you to click on and go in and fill out all of the information, all of your personal information, your email address, your password, your social security number, anything that, you know, they're wanting to say that they need to have in order to validate that your email address or your bank account is legit. So it's very simple to do. You hover over top of the link, and you'll be able to get this pop-up, and it will show you exactly the link that it's taking you to. And if this doesn't show up the way this is, you can guarantee that this is a malicious email and you're being actively phished. So again, typical phishing tricks. There's a sense of urgency. You need to hurry up and do something before an action is taken, a negative action is taken against either yourself or an account. Those would be the consequences. Giving you a link to sign in with in order to fill out that information to quote-unquote validate that account is legitimate. Sometimes you'll be rewarded to receive compensation for performing an action. So, you know, maybe you get an email that says, you know, if you take this survey, we'll give you $50 in an Amazon gift card. But you have to give up personal information in order to do that. Again, another one, your account is being migrated or upgraded, and you need to log in to verify whether or not your account is still active, and detection of unusual activity or a sign in from an unknown location that you must verify. Best practices in this is that you don't ever want to click on a link in an email. If you get an email from Bank of America that looks something like this, or you know, you get an email like this that's supposed to be coming from your help desk, pick up the phone call and call them and ask them if this is a legitimate email. Go to Bank of America directly. Don't click on the link here, but actually open up a web browser and go to bankofamerica.com. Or send this to an abuse email address that they have, or notify the company that you received this malicious email. Companies are always looking for phishing attempts and new tricks that are being put out there. So that's why I say notify the company that you received this, in order for them to know that, you know, another phishing campaign is going on, and this is what the phishing email looks like. Again, verifying the email, hovering over the links, verify the email address. Have someone look at the headers of an email. So if you have somebody who is dedicated to running your email systems, they would be able to look at the actual additional information that comes along with the email itself and detect whether or not that's malicious or legitimate. A lot of times we had a phishing attempt at Merit, and I bring this one up because this one was actually how it tipped off our chief financial officer. We normally get invoices from a particular company, and somehow this malicious user knew that we get invoices from this company quite often. So what happened was that she had received this phishing email, but when she started to actually take a look at it, she noticed that the phone number was different than what was normally on those emails. She sent it over to me. I took a look at it. I was able to dissect it. And in fact, that email was malicious. It had a malicious attachment to it where it wanted to install ransomware on her machine. So just little nuances like that you want to take a look at and be aware of. You know, does an email address look funny? Does the phone number look different? Those types of things. And again, when in doubt, call the help desk, call the company, call somebody that kind of knows what's going on if you're not sure about a particular email, and work through the process and seeing whether or not it's legitimate. So protecting your infrastructure. Everybody knows what a firewall is, what antivirus is. Those are key to starting off and implementing into your security program. But you want to go a step further. I know a lot of libraries, especially with their patron side of the house, where people come in and have access to computer terminals, they use deep freeze in order to protect the computers from any kind of malware or anything that might have been downloaded to the machine, and those types of things. The other thing you want to do is take a look at splitting up your network, keeping that separation there of bring your own device, and your patrons coming in and bringing in maybe their cell phones, connecting it to the wireless, bringing in their laptops and those types of things. You want to be able to protect your business side of your organization, but also allow your patrons to be able to do what they want to do on their side of the network, and what they're allowed to take a look at. And this is what a typical split of the network would look like. So you've got the firewall here at the bottom, and basically what you've got is you've got two completely separate networks. So you've got your guest network here, and you've got your employee network over here. So you've got employee wireless, guest wireless. This is a desk where patrons can come in, use the computers, maybe somebody's got a laptop, and you've got your employee workstations over on this side. You can craft your firewall rules in a given way to where it would keep both of these networks completely separated from each other. That way, if somebody over on this side downloaded something malicious, either on purpose or by accident, it wouldn't traverse the network into the employee side and infect your employee workstations. So this, like I said, this is just one example of being able to split up the network. There's other ways of being able to do it, but this is the most common way of keeping a trusted network versus an untrusted network. This being the trusted side, this being the untrusted side of the network. Keeping sensitive data secret. Theft is a huge problem. 1 in 10 laptops are stolen every 53 seconds. When I was working in higher education, we had, at one particular institution I worked for the 3.5 years that I worked there, we had 3 incidences where a laptop with sensitive information was stolen on a laptop. The first one was when we had a recruiter go to Chicago that had high schoolers' names, address, phone numbers, going out there to actively recruit them to go to the university. They stopped at a Starbucks in downtown Chicago, left their laptop in plain view in the backseat of their car. They were in there for 5 minutes, came back out, noticed that their back window was punched out and they had their laptop stolen. That was a black eye for us, and we had to publicly release that as a breach of sensitive information. Another incident happened where we had a professor go over to London and check into a hotel room. He got there too early, and they had told him that his room wasn't available yet. So somebody who was dressed as a bellhop came up to him and said, go ahead and leave your stuff with me. I'll go ahead and look over it. Go out and enjoy London and look at the sights and sounds. And when your room is ready, come back and, your stuff will be protected and safe. And just go ahead and grab it from me and go ahead and check into your hotel room. So that's exactly what he did. He left his stuff with the bellhop, went out for a few hours, came back. The bellhop was gone. He went up to the front desk, asked where the bellhop was, and asked where his suitcase was with his laptop. And they said that they didn't have somebody that worked for the hotel that matched the description that he was trying to describe. So it was somebody who was impersonating a bellhop that stole all of his personal belongings, including all of his sensitive information on his laptop. That included not only FERPA data, but a lot of the research data that he was doing, because he was going now over there to give a talk for a seminar or a conference on some of the research that he had been doing for the university. And as you can see here, that's not only part of that, but places where they're most likely to be stolen: work in office, 7%, cafes and restaurants. If you've got your laptop and you have to get up and go refill your pop or go use the restroom, come back and your stuff is gone. Stuff being stolen out of your car. And you have to understand the differences between sensitive and non-sensitive information as well. Sensitive with personal information and sensitive information that's non-personal. That being diagrams, research information, those types of things. Sometimes that requires a notification of a breach. Sometimes it's just detrimental to your organization. So what are the potential costs when you have information stolen? There was a study that was done a number of years ago. The average global cost of a data breach was $154 a record. The average cost in healthcare was $363, whereas the average cost in higher education was $300. And the average reduced cost, this is a little staggering here at the bottom, saying that if you've got cybersecurity insurance, it reduces the cost only by $4.40. So if you take $4.40 and subtract that from the $300, that's what you're paying per record. If you've got board level involvement, you deduct the $5.50 from that $300, so you're paying $294.50 per stolen record. That is because of cyber insurance kicking in and taking over and paying any of the stolen records or things like that. But if you're sued for loss of information, that's why it's only reducing it by that amount. And what does that do to your reputation? Your reputation's priceless. You want to be able to be that organization that people trust their sensitive information with, and you don't want to be the organization that is continuously losing sensitive information because people won't go back to your organization anymore and do business with you. Here at the top, State of Michigan has an Identity Theft Protection Act where if you do not state that you have been breached within a reasonable amount of time and they don't give you what they consider reasonable, you can be fined up to a maximum of $750,000. So what do you do with all of this? You basically encrypt everything, because if you encrypt your laptops, your desktops, your thumb drives, everything like that, and it gets stolen, you don't have to pay these fines because your information's encrypted. It's basically garbage on your hard drive, and there's no way of being able for a thief to get access to that sensitive information without actually having the password or the key to decrypt your laptop or your thumb drive in order to gain access to that information. So for Windows, we've got BitLocker. Mac, we've got File Vault. Anybody out there who uses Linux, there's an application called Crypt Setup or Lux. These are all full disk encryption. We've got file level encryption where, we've got VeraCrypt or PGP or GNU PG. These are all free for use that you can go out there and you can use right now to protect your mobile endpoints. You want to make sure that you're encrypting everything in flight, and you're focused on the confidentiality and the integrity of the information. And you also want to make sure that you're staying up to date on encryption algorithms that are no longer being used or no longer being used as best practice because they're known to be broken in the environment. So now that we get to cybersecurity frameworks, this is really how you align your business with security best practices. So President Obama in 2014, under an executive order, had the National Institute for Standards and Technology create the NIST cybersecurity framework. And that's broken up into 5 different functions, which is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And then those are broken down individually into 21 different categories. And from those 21 different categories, they're again broken down into subcategories. And if we take a look here, how do you implement governance within your organization? So you're taking these steps in order to create policy standards and procedures in order to create governance within your organization. And they also have an information references guide here on the right, or a matrix that shows you, if you have to abide by different compliance requirements, they show you which ones you will also meet if you are meeting these different subcategories here. So you've got anywhere from COVID-5 to NIST Special Publication 853, which is really used by the federal government, ISO 27000 series. They do not have HIPAA yet, they do not have PCI yet, but there is going to be a new revision coming in within the next couple of months that I've been told that will have more information references that will have PCI and HIPAA and some of the other regulations as well. So you're not left in the dark of being able to having to go between the NIST cybersecurity framework and trying to figure out how that aligns with HIPAA and PCI. This is where I say that the NIST cybersecurity framework meets your administrative controls, that being your policy standards and procedures. The Centers for Internet Security 20 critical security controls, this is your technical controls. And this used to be called the SANS Top 20, if anybody's familiar with that. 2 years ago, the Centers for Internet Security took over the project and has been running it ever since. They tout that if you meet the top 5, so inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices, inventory of authorized and unauthorized software, secure configurations, continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation, and controlled use of administrative privileges, that being not running your laptop or your desktop as an administrator, it will reduce your risk and your risk to compromise by 85%. So just by putting these 5 controls in, you will mitigate 85% of the risk to your organization. These all go in order from most important to least important. As you can see here at the tail end, for number 20, penetration tests is the very last one that's on the list. And I bring that up because penetration testing is, your final exam. Once you've put all of these in place, you want to make sure that everything's been put in properly, and that's where the penetration tests come into play. Spend your money up front putting these in first and making sure that these are all working properly, because penetration testing can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $250,000 upwards. You want to make sure that you're spending your money on things that are necessary, things that make sense. So these here, outside of maybe the vulnerability assessments, these are very simple, low-cost ways of protecting your environment. Malware defenses, making sure you've got antivirus put in. Do you need to have disaster recovery and data recovery? Those types of things. Again, penetration testing should be the very last thing that you want to do in order to protect your environment. How do you start a privacy program? Now, privacy programs have, or the definition of privacy means different things to different people. And you will not have, if you ask different people what they define as privacy, they will come up with different ways of, what they define as what's private and what's not private. So, legal scholar Arthur Miller says, declaring privacy is difficult to define because it's exasperatingly vague and evanescent. Author Jonathan Franzen says privacy proves to be the Cheshire cat of values, where there's not much substance but a very winning smile. Legal theorist Robert Post states privacy is a value so complex, so entangled in competing and contradictory dimensions, so engorged with various and distinct meanings, that I sometimes despair whether it can be usefully addressed at all. The last one is probably the most important one. Comes from Samuel Warren and Louis Brandeis, where they wrote an article back in the late 1800s that says privacy is the right to be let alone. And in fact, they stated that privacy was dead in 1884. Why? Because of the creation of the Kodak camera. It was the Kodak camera allowed individuals to go out and take pictures without having somebody professional taking the photographs for them. They could go around and take photos wherever they wanted to. So privacy technically has been dead for over 120 plus years now. We hear privacy is dead almost every other day, but that's the first time you've ever actually heard that privacy was dead. Now there are differences between privacy and security. Privacy, you're protecting the confidential information. You're ensuring those who require access to the information is given just enough rights that is required to access that information, and privacy as a consequence of security. You cannot have privacy without having security. Security is the #1 top priority, and you need to put in those security controls before you start working on privacy within your organization. And here's a really good privacy quote. I pulled this from the American Library Association. The right to privacy is the right to read, consider, and develop ideas and beliefs free from observation or unwanted surveillance by the government or others. It is the bedrock foundation of intellectual freedom. It is essential to the exercise of free speech, free thought, and free association. So when you're beginning a privacy program, you want to define your organization's privacy vision and mission statement. So what does privacy mean to your organization, and what are you going to do in order to protect your patrons' privacy when they come into your facility? You need to develop a strategy that aligns with that mission and vision statement. And you need to lay the groundwork for the rest of your your privacy program. So what goes into a vision and mission statement? The objectives, the scope of the privacy program. You need to identify any legal or regulatory requirements, and identify personal information and legal requirements that go along with that. And I really, want people to go back and take a look at the American Libraries Association website and review the Library Bill of Rights. That was something that I wanted to make sure that I'm sure everybody's aware of and has gone out there and read, but you may want to go back out there and take a refresher and read through it and get familiar with it again. So when you're putting information in the cloud, it reduces capital expenditures, meaning it's reducing the amount of money that you're spending on hardware, and it's also possibly reducing your operational expenditures as well. The cloud as a service provider can protect your data better than a small to medium-sized organization can. And there have been many studies that have stated that putting your information in the Amazon cloud or in Google Cloud or different cloud service providers is more effective, and you get a higher sense of security than you would if you were to try and protect that yourself. Because you're paying that monthly fee for them in order to protect that information, they're able to have the capital to buy the firewalls, the intrusion prevention systems, to pay for the personnel who have the expertise in order to protect your information and protect that organization. However, you are still in control of how those settings are configured and how people access that information when it's stored in that cloud service provider. Anytime you move information into the cloud, that does not give you any liabilities of moving that information into the cloud. So for instance, if you have moved your information into Google Cloud or Rackspace or something like that, and your information was compromised, you, within your contract, can go back and sue them for loss of information to help pay for the breach notifications that you have to put forth, because you are still required to follow the breach notifications. It's still your data at the end of the day that you're storing out there. So it's a trust relationship between your organization and that cloud service provider. You cannot relieve yourself from the liability, is basically what it boils down to when you move things out to the cloud. But I still say moving your information out to the cloud is a safer bet than keeping your stuff in-house if you're a small organization. Information sharing with trusted third parties. Everybody, I'm assuming, is within the state of Michigan who's on the line today. So what you can do is you can go out to the state of Michigan's website and look up the Department of Technology Management and Budget. There is a division, or the DT&B is the division, but there is a organization within DT&B called Michigan Cybersecurity that has a number of resources that you can go out there and freely download to get you more information on how to protect yourselves. I use Twitter quite a bit to keep up with news feeds and seeing what's going out there within the security environments. StaySafeOnline.org is another great resource to go out there and look at. And again, two-factor authentication. There's actually a website that's dedicated to showing you which online services provide two-factor authentication when accessing their resources. And it will also show you which resources do not have the capability of providing multi-factor authentication, and will give you information on how to contact that outside resource and state that, you know, when are you going to have two-factor authentication activated within your organization, because the level of risk of me putting sensitive information into your organization is too great without having that second factor of authentication, that higher level of assurance that those who are logging in are who they say they are. Lastly, you know, if you are a nonprofit organization, I want to call to everybody's attention the multi-state ISAC. At the beginning of the slide deck, it had my contact information. If you want me to, I can put you in contact with the multi-state ISAC, or you can go out to their website and fill out a form and become a multi-state ISAC partner. And what they provide is webinars, white papers to help you understand what's going out there in the threat landscape. They also provide resources for incident response if you need to have somebody to take a look at your logs, those types of things. You will be able to go out there and you know, be a partner of them, and it's free of charge because they are funded by the Department of Homeland Security. They are for all nonprofit organizations, not just for government. So universities can be part of the multi-state ISAC. Nonprofit hospitals can be part of the multi-state ISAC. It doesn't just have to be government related. Let's Encrypt is a free resource to create SSL certificates. So instead of going out there and spending $400, $500, $600 on an SSL certificate, you can go out there and download this software and utilize it for free, and you can create SSL certificates and encrypt all of your web services free of charge. Again, Centers for Internet Security, the National Institute for Standards and Technology with their cybersecurity framework. I put the Defense Information Systems Agency on here because that is also another great resource that people can go out there and take a look at. They have standard build guides and hardening guides as far as how to configure servers and routers and switches properly. And then also the Michigan State Police Department. They have a cybersecurity division that they are there in case of, if you have a cybersecurity incident, you can leverage the Michigan State Police Department to have them also come in and help you triage and try and figure out who attacked you, how you were attacked, and then they will go after those malicious users from a legal standpoint. So that is the completion of my presentation today. Is there any questions from anybody who's out there? Yeah, Facebook. You know, Facebook is been in the spotlight the last few days. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to you know, the proceedings with Mark Zuckerberg and you know, in front of Congress. I haven't had a chance to watch any of it, but you know, some of the things that are coming out there are pretty alarming. You know, if you've got, like, for instance, Facebook Messenger installed on your phone, it captures your phone call information, so who you called, how long you were on the phone for, your text messages. He even came out and stated that, you know, they're collecting information on people who do not have a Facebook account. So that is, you know, something that, you know, from a privacy perspective, you want to take a look at, not only for Facebook, but for LinkedIn and any other social media account, and really take a look at what you're sharing online.
Well, everybody's so quiet. Nobody's asking any questions. I have a ton of questions, but, you know, that's me. Well, mostly because I was watching all the hearings and pondering Facebook and also all the other third-party applications, you know, and everything has such a long agreement that how can anybody really sit and slog through that? I was just telling Jason, I was my bank, my credit union sent me, you know, information about an app, and when I started putting my information in as though I were going to use the app, I got two different things, which, you know, I needed to read and sign and agree to, and I decided not to even finish the process because it was just so overwhelming, and there's so much that, you know, there's so much information that they're telling you what they're taking, but it's, you know, kind of a long ordeal to protect yourself if you don't want inadvertent sharing. I don't know what other best practices that you would have, Jason, to suggest.
You know, there's a new thing out there that's called too long didn't read. And that really has to go into the privacy and security guidelines for each organization. And if you look up TL ;DR in Google, they kind of collapse everything down into, you know, a few paragraphs as opposed to, you know, multiple pages, so you can go through and read the highlights of what you're actually signing up for. And again, that's TL ;DR, too long didn't read. But other than that, I mean, you know, multi-factor authentication, watching what you're putting out there, paying attention to phishing emails. Those are really a lot of the best practices that I can suggest. It
looks like you've got a question from Mary about what about situations where organizations' data is being held and they indicate you have to pay to get it back? This sounds like one of your phishing examples.
Yeah, Mary, it sounds like you're talking about ransomware. You know, the FBI, Michigan State Police, and those organizations have come out and said, do not pay the ransom. Rely on your backups if you have them. So, you know, ensuring that you are maintaining proper backups, you are testing those backups on a regular basis, and ensuring that you know, all your data is there that you expect to be there. That's your best way of getting around having to pay for the ransom. Now, if you don't have any good backups and it's information that's, you know, could be detrimental to your organization if you weren't able to get that back, you're almost stuck in having to pay for the ransom. But the best thing I can tell you to do is use some type of backup, whether it's you know, cloud-based backup through Google Drive or Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, or even, you know, maybe USB attached storage, and using that as backups as well.
Any other questions that anyone has that's still on? We have 17 people that are still on. Jason, I want to tell you how much we appreciate you having spent this time with us. Looks like Denise just said, a friend told me that on a recent trip, there was a facility that stored the data that is the cloud. So are you asking, Denise, if there's something else called the cloud? I'm going to unmute everybody. Let's see, how can I do that? Feel free to unmute yourself, everybody. Okay. Denise, if you're still there. There you go.
Sorry, I was racing to finish the question too hurriedly. You know how we all, those of us who have iPhones, have the opportunity to store our stuff in the cloud, and we talk about where this cloud is. And Jason mentioned that that's a more secure place to store your data than potentially at your local library. And so, again, a friend just told me this week that she was on a trip and she was told by someone on this island that actually the cloud is really on that island in a facility, storage facility. And so I'm curious, or a computer, you know, a room full of computers that are storing the data that's supposedly in the cloud. Jason, you know, is that just a tourist kind of thing that is being told on that particular island? Or is this true? Is the cloud really somewhere physical that is just as vulnerable as any one of you know, of our technology solutions that we have in libraries?
So the cloud is defined as somebody else's computer. It's basically what it is. And the cloud is not security to that island. Cloud data centers are all over the world. For instance, Microsoft has a number of data centers throughout the U.S. They've got data centers in Ireland, throughout Europe, in China. And you can say the same thing for Google and a lot of the other service providers. Amazon, for instance, has 3 data centers, which is their cloud along the East Coast, and they have a few data centers on the West Coast and some in the desert region in Arizona. So it's really what the cloud is just somebody else's computer that you're storing your information on, or you are using an application that's in the cloud, but you're going across the internet to that software as a service. So instead of, let's say for instance you are an Office 365 user. You have the ability to download Office onto your local workstation. But you are also able to go to Microsoft's cloud and leverage Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel from your web browser. So basically what you're doing is you're not using the software that's locally installed on your computer. You're going out to Microsoft's cloud and you are using their software in their data center over an internet connection with a web browser.
Okay, and so the follow-up to that is, so the cloud is more likely to be more secure because there are other fail-safes and, services that SAS provider provides to you, but they could potentially still have data breaches.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, not every organization is 100% secure. I mean, you have to drive zero risk. But like I had mentioned earlier, they have the money to protect your information. They are able to pay for the personnel that have the expertise in order to protect your data. So that's why I say for smaller organizations, leveraging the cloud is a better way of securing your organization than trying to do it on your own.
I just muted some people that were making noise, so you can unmute yourself if you have another question. We are at kind of over time, so any other questions real quick?
Just a thank you. Great webinar.
You're very welcome.
Yes, I very much appreciate you being able to do this with us today, Jason. And everybody, I will be posting the recorded webinar in the archive, and I'll send you out a link. So I think we'll bring today to a close and sign off. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.